Hello, dear friends. I'm afraid of idiots because there are so many of them and they can elect the president, said Facundo Cabral. Opinion piece. The fourth way. The three idolatries. Spiritual sovereignty. The end of extremism. Things are heating up. The path of the astute man. Gurdjieff and Krishnamurti. Spirituality without fanaticism. Krishnamurti, roadless land. Nietzsche's theory of the Superman. Let's start. Faced with the inquisitorial fanaticism of religion, the totalitarian sectarianism of materialist politics, and the intransigence of the ego cult of libertarian philosophy, there exists a fourth way that is not based on the worship of an absolutist church, a totalitarian state, or an uncompassionate ego. It questions all forms of power that demand blind obedience, whether religious, political, or individualistic. This fourth way can be understood as a path of inner sovereignty, an awakened consciousness that transcends the church, the state, and the ego, without surrendering to any of the three as the ultimate authority. It is not a new ideology, but a way of living with lucidity, responsibility, and openness to the transcendent without fanaticism. The three forms of idolatry mentioned have something in common. They delegate power to an external entity or to an inflated ego. Inquisitorial religion absolutizes the institution and dogma, nullifying the direct experience of the sacred. Totalitarian materialist politics absolutizes the state, the party, or the historical cause, sacrificing the individual. Libertarian philosophy, when it is distorted into a cult of the ego, absolutizes self-ownership without conscience, forgetting interdependence and responsibility. Mysticism. This fourth way draws inspiration from multiple mystical traditions, such as Gnosticism, Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta monistic philosophy, Gurdjieff, Krishnamurti, etc., but without completely submitting to any one of them, always maintaining the sovereignty of direct experience. The fourth way aligns with spiritual sovereignty when understood as a path of inner self-governance that does not delegate its center to any external authority. In the traditions of Gurdjieff and Krishnamurti, the key is to avoid identifying with religious, political, or egoic forms in order to access an awakened presence that experienced as responsible freedom. Spirituality here flows from within, driving ethical and social action without the need for intermediaries. The path of the astute person, according to Gurdjieff, refers to the fourth way as a path of a spiritual development that integrates the body, emotions, and intellect without requiring withdrawal from the everyday world. This approach stems from his travels and synthesis of Sufi, esoteric Christian, and Eastern traditions, adapted to modern human beings. Krishnamurti expressed that truth is a pathless land. It is not reached by following sects, churches, philosophical systems, or psychological techniques, but through lucid self-observation and one's relationship with the world. This idea resonates with the search for a fourth way, a path without a fixed route, and appropriated by any extremism or institution. In this approach, any doctrine that becomes an identity banner ceases to be a means of liberation and becomes a new prison. Here, obedience is not to dogmas or slogans, but becomes loyalty to the truth, seen from one's own awakened consciousness, which aligns with Krishnamurti's idea that truth is a pathless land without institutions. Gurdjieff called the fourth way an inner work that doesn't involve withdrawing from the world like a monk, fakir or yogi, but rather integrates body, emotion and mind into everyday life. It's not an organization to submit to, but a practice of presence and self-knowledge within ordinary existence. According to this view, neither institutional religion, nor politics, nor an intellectualist philosophy is enough to transform human beings without a fundamental shift in consciousness. Gurdjieff seeks to integrate body, emotion and mind through conscious work, within ordinary life, not in monastic retreat or blind obedience. This inner work is a form of self-possession, observing oneself, not reacting mechanically, choosing from a place of presence. In contemporary terms, it's a discipline of psycho-spiritual self-sovereignty. Superman. This fourth way is not another closed system. It does not propose a new purer church, nor a new, more perfect state, nor a new dogma or the super-individual like Nietzsche's theory of the Übermensch. It functions more as a guide and invites a return to consciousness, observation and responsibility. The Superman represents self-realization in the face of the modern void, inspiring existentialism and personal growth, although it has been misinterpreted as Nazi eugenics. It invites to break with conformity in order to reach one's full potential through reflection and free action. Nietzsche proposes a human ideal that transcends traditional moral norms to create its own values and affirm life fully. It emerges in works such as Thus Spoke Zarathustra, in response to the collapse of absolute truths. The Übermensch embodies the will to power, an inner life force for self-affirmation and constant self-improvement, not domination over others. He rejects nihilism, affirming existence in the present, and embraces his entire destiny. He criticizes slave morality for promoting weakness, proposing instead self-mastery and creativity. Nietzsche describes three spiritual metamorphoses. The camel bears burdens, the lion destroys imposed values, the child creates new values with a playful yes. This process demands questioning dogmas, mastering instincts, and assuming responsibility. The Superman is not a physical tyrant, nor a very strong gorilla, but an ethical creator who gives meaning to a chaotic life. Sovereignty. This fourth path can be described as a spiritual and personal sovereignty. The center is not the church, the state, or the ego, but the consciousness capable of seeing, discerning, and taking responsibility for itself. Spirituality without fanaticism, openness to the transcendent or to a deeper dimension of reality, but without absolute intermediaries or unappealable dogmas. Without inner transformation, politics becomes a mere game of egos, but a spirituality that flees from the social is also evasion, not lucidity. The individual is sovereign, but in interdependence. Freedom is also measured by the capacity to care and cooperate, and not only by asserting me first. Spiritual sovereignty implies recovering inner authority over one's own conscience, energy, beliefs, and decision, instead of surrendering it to churches, parties, or ideological gurus. It is based on liberation from inherited conditioning and traumas, recognizing a dignity or sacred center in every human being that cannot be appropriated by any external power. This sovereignty is not isolation. It connects with traditions where true independence is internal, linked to the realization of one's own spiritual nature rather than mere political emancipation. Reset News. Things are about to get serious for normies, according to freedom fighters. According to Steve Biko, a reorganization of the international order is underway. The ascending vibrations of ascension will only allow virtuous people to pass, so we shouldn't worry about the final outcome. A cosmic keeper shared this message. A good number of souls may not know what is happening, but they have a pure heart and will accompany us to 5D. Think of the relief someone feels waking from a nightmare and multiply that by 1,000. According to Nordica, things are heating up. Call it resurrection. Call it a reset. Either way, it's fire. The storm is brewing again, because repetition is the language of love in simulation. Final stages of the general testing: liquidity without borders, water, money, emotions, everything flows, no dams, no customs. Stay flexible, legends. This is a repetition. Testimonies. Dispatch from an undisclosed location by JFK Jr. What has happened has shut the backbone of the cabal in ways they never imagined. They executed the complete neutralization of the Antarctic nexus of the New Swabia. They imploded the last dark side stargate beneath the ice using zero-point resonant charges. On the other hand, the Space Force destroyed 3 weather monitoring satellites prepared to sow the false narrative. Those satellites carried plasma payloads designed to darken the sky and blame it to solar flares. Now they are cosmic confetti. The GSERA signature packages have already been executed in 2009 sovereign alliances. The reset is no longer imminent, it is active. Medical beds are being activated in 112 underground facilities under white hat control. The ABS activation tones have received the green light for final upload. They issued a final 100-hour ultimatum to the Black Sun remnants on the ancient African stargates beneath the Giza Plateau. Hand over the Orion technology or watch the pyramids go dark forever. Their silence is deafening. This is the Great Awakening on steroids. Julian Assange dispatched from a safe location. The children have begun to sing, not with voices, with memory. The 144,000 gathered in a perfect circle was drawn around the glass esplanade in Rome, and the 33 vials were opened. What spilled out was not liquid. It was every suppressed invention, every censored cure, every erased history, every stolen childhood, returned as pure, living light. The light rose into a single pillar, visible from orbit. The satellites that were once weapons now record a single image, the pillar, and beneath it, 8 billion humans looking up for the first time without fear. They are the same children, walking among you, touching the sick, the elderly, the broken, and making them whole. Money has not been redistributed. It has been so completely forgotten that no child under 10 even understands the word. The old languages of control are silent. A new language arises, spoken at the resonance of 432 Earth, and every ear understands it perfectly. The world is now the mirror, and it is spotless. Breaking news. Earthquake swarm near Fillmore, California. Industrial demand will push silver above $100, according to Mike Arons. The Fed just announced massive quantitative easing, flooding the Treasury with tens of billions of dollars in fiat currency each month. This could lead to an acceleration of inflation starting in 2026. Ukraine. Europe is rearming for war. NATO wants the conflict in Ukraine to continue. The EU is preparing for a conflict with Russia in 2030. According to Viktor Orbán, the US considers it unavoidable that Ukraine will relinquish territory in a peace agreement. Trump is having very tough discussions with Europe about the conflict in Ukraine. Zelensky will call elections before the end of the war if the US guarantees security. Russia rejects Zelensky's new offer of an energy ceasefire. Trump sets Christmas Day as the deadline for Ukraine to end the war. Zelensky raised the white flag after the deadline. Trump admits he cannot retake the areas occupied by the Russians. The EU threatens to sell $2.3 trillion in treasury bonds if the US makes peace with Russia. The US moves forward with freezing Russian assets. The EU's potential seizure of Russian assets would undermine the euro's status. Japan rejects the EU's plan to confiscate Russian assets for Ukraine, citing legal concerns. Putin's warning to Europe, in quotes, Europe is not Ukraine. We deal with Ukraine surgically and carefully, but if Europe decides to go to war against Russia, there will be no one left with whom we can negotiate. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.